Yeah, thank you for having me here today. Thank you for organizing the conference. So I will be brief. I hope I will also be brilliant. I'm a fifth-year PhD student at University of Bonn, and this is actually my job market paper for next year, so in 12 months. So your feedback is really appreciated for today. And so let's start by what we already know. So we all know that workers don't just care about wages. They also care about all sorts of non-wage amenities. So work from home, on-the-job training, all these different dimensions. And what we're implicitly assuming is typically that if workers care about all different dimensions, wages, work from home, all these dimensions, that firms also know what workers' preferences are and that they set some optimal wage and amenity bundle. But to provide this optimal bundle, they also need to have unbiased beliefs about what workers want, and this might be very challenging. So what we try to do in this paper is we want to test this assumption, and we try to understand whether firms have correct beliefs about workers' preferences. So we have three things we're doing in the paper. I can only talk about the first one today. So the first one is we're asking whether firms hold correct beliefs about workers' valuations of non-wage amenities. And how we're going to do this, we're going to run a large-scale survey with firms and workers in Germany, where we will compare workers' preferences and firms' beliefs about workers' preferences. And second, I can only briefly talk about this today, is to try to understand why firms might get it wrong. And finally, what consequences in equilibrium are, and whether this actually matters. All right, so the setting is we ran a large-scale survey with firms and workers in Germany. So this is from all different types of occupations and industries. And what we have, I think this is quite nice. It's mostly actually owners and high-level managers within the firm. Yeah, so the respondents on the firm side are actually people who make the decisions within their firm. It's often small to medium-sized firms. So most firms in Germany are actually very small. And owners are often like everything in once. So they do the wages, they do the amenities, and everything else. And we will also be able to link the responses to firm-level admin data later on this year. All right, so what we're going to do, we will have two surveys, one firm survey, one worker survey. In the firm survey, we will measure firms' beliefs about workers' valuations, and in the worker survey, we have to benchmark their real valuations. And the amenities we look at is work from home, which will be the most interesting for everyone here today. But we're also looking at predictive scheduling, on-the-job training, feedback meetings, and a 4-day work week, which means same number of hours, but only on 4 days instead of 5. All right. So in design, how we measure beliefs and valuations, we will use the same paradigm for both workers and firms. And we will always have discrete choice experiments where workers and firms can choose between two different types of jobs. Yeah, it's the same task content. The only difference between the two jobs is that one job pays a bit more, but doesn't have the amenity, and the other job pays a little less, but has the amenity. All right, and we can do this iteratively to recover valuations and beliefs on the individual level for each amenity. All right, so this is how the decision screen looks like. So we always have this job A, work from home is possible. Job B, work from home is not possible. Job A pays a little less. Job B pays a little more. And then we ask, do workers prefer job A or job B? And when you click on job B, you get a different salary differential. If you click on job A, so depending on what you say, we change the salary differential to infer precise willingness to pay for these amenities or beliefs. All right, so for the workers, we use the exact same paradigm. So also discrete choice experiment, hypothetical choices between the two jobs. Again, they only differ in these two dimensions. But now we don't ask about beliefs, but we ask, would you choose job A or job B yourself? All right, same decision screen again. OK, so let's drive straight into the main result. So we're interested whether workers' valuations and firm beliefs align. So this would be the 45-degree line in this figure. If firms overestimate how much workers care about amenities, we would be above the 45-degree line. And if they underestimate it, we would be below the 45-degree line. So before I show the results, I would like to see your predictions first. Maybe someone with a microphone, maybe Emma, you have a microphone right now. What do you think? Do firms get it right? Do they sometimes overestimate, sometimes underestimate?
I've seen the paper, so.
You've seen the paper, okay, you can. Okay, perhaps next, maybe Nick.
I was on the committee, so I know the.
Okay, everyone else.
I'm gonna say maybe they underestimate.
Okay. For all amenities, or only for some?
For working from home, I'm thinking.
Work from home, okay. All right, anyone else?
Maybe there's going to be a curve. At some level, they're going to be underestimating, and then there'll be overestimating. Maybe.
Okay, I think we have two predictions now. Going in opposite directions, which is always great. So what we find is for all amenities we look at, firms underestimate how much workers value these amenities. And this is quite sizable. So for example, for predictive scheduling, valuations are 37% higher than beliefs. And for work from home, it's also quite large, the gap. So the main result is firms underestimate workers' valuations. So it's for all amenities. So for all amenities, it's significant. And the immediate next question is whether these beliefs might matter for amenity adoption. And what I'm going to show you next is the same figure, but now we will split the firm sample into firms who adopt the amenities and firms who don't adopt these amenities. And what we find is that the amenity adopters are actually quite unbiased. So for work from home, they get it completely right. And amenity non-adopters are like the gray dots. They get it very wrong. Yeah, so it seems like these beliefs have something to do with what firms are actually doing. All right, let me give you like a very short outlook because I don't have the time to talk about like the entire 126 pages draft we have right now. So what we find is what I already showed you, like firms underestimate how much they care. Then second, we are asking why they get it wrong. Yeah, so this might just be random chance, or our methodology might be wrong. So what we hypothesize and also find is that managers themselves have very different preferences than workers. Yeah, so managers are typically older, they are more likely to be male, and might also just work harder in general and perhaps might care more about money. And when we ask them about their own valuations, we find that they value these amenities much less, and that their own beliefs are very strongly linked to their preferences. Yeah, so managers who don't care about amenities also think that nobody else cares about this. So it seems like there's this strong difference in preferences between managers and workers that drives this result. And finally, we are looking at like consequences in equilibrium. So this might not be relevant at all. So we set up a simple model to look at how these misperceptions might have consequences. And what the model predicts is quite simple. So firms should adopt an amenity when the amenity is cheaper or the costs are lower than workers' valuations. Yeah, so if work from home costs $50 per month for a worker, but a worker would be willing to have a wage cut of 20%, then it would be optimal to offer work from home. Yeah, and what we see is, first in the data, that would be optimal for basically everyone who doesn't adopt when they can offer it. And that the model predicts that this leads to excess labor costs. Yeah, so you pay too high wages, too low amenities, and then you're less competitive than your competitors in the labor market. And this is also what we find. So firms who underestimate are doing less well in the labor market. All right, so why is this interesting? So why, perhaps for this crowd, so what do we see in the past couple of years? First, after COVID, the spike in work from home, and then some firms started to have these return to office policies. And I think our paper might be one explanation for why firms are stopping these work from home policies, even though they seem not to decrease productivity and are quite cheap and workers really value it. One explanation might be that these older and more male managers who have different preferences than workers underestimate how much the workers value it. All right, so quick outlook for what we're doing next. So right now we're in the field to have an info experiment with the managers to see whether shifting their beliefs might change adoption. We will then be able to link the firm responses to German admin data, and we will test some model predictions in aggregate admin data, and of course the next thing we will do is implement your suggestions. So, thank you. I hope we'll have some nice discussion. Thank you.
Simon, why don't you direct questions, actually? Going forwards, we'll have the speaker direct. You just point to who you want.
Yeah, sure. Over there.
I had two quick questions on the methodology. So should we think of this as like marginal or average valuation? So in the light of sort of the work by Natalia and Emma, for instance, like the selection into these things, maybe the manager is like, no one wants this amendy when we offered it because everyone already had it or something like the marginal and average might really matter here.
This is a great question. So
and then is this pre-tax or post-tax when they think
so
about valuation?
we say that it's pre-tax, and both workers and firms know that it's pre-tax. Okay? And what we also do is we randomize whether we ask the manager about the mean worker, the median worker, or the marginal worker, and it doesn't make a difference in our setting. So they always underestimate it. And finally, there are too many workers in the market who like work from home for too few firms who offer it. Yeah, it doesn't seem like we can just split the market into two groups. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, great. It seems that to me that what you may want to know is the beliefs about the relevant worker pool, no, not necessarily about the average worker. And given that you find this effect of those who offer the amenity actually are unbiased, I was wondering whether that could be driven by the fact that they actually have the correct perceptions about the worker.
Yeah, exactly. They might have learned over time. I think it's also possible that we might underestimate it too much right now. So what we can do later with a firm admin data is we can kind of create your own workforce. Kind of we know your workers have demographics X or Y, and then we can kind of create some artificial firm for you. Yeah, please.
It would be awesome to see, you might be underpowered to do this, but heterogeneity in the type of worker to see whether it's just, oh, I am the residual claimant, I am the owner of this company, and so I have different preferences, or it's actually about being old and male, right? If I have workers who are old and male, or workers who are in managerial positions, or more experienced or something, do they have more similar preferences to the firm owners or firm deciders?
That's a very good point, thank you.
Yeah, related to that, what predicts bias in beliefs? Which managerial characteristics, which firm characteristics?
So you mean firm size or manager characteristics? So it's older managers?
Characteristics probably more interesting, but size as well. I'm guessing you've looked at a predictive model.
Yeah.
Try to relate the bias and beliefs to observables of the firms and managers.
So observables, it's mostly being older and male, but your own valuations are much more predictive. So your own valuations explain 33% of the variance. Yeah, but demographics don't do too much.
Okay.
And it's also there's huge differences between industries. So IT people get it right, and more manufacturing people tend to get it wrong. Over there,
How good are workers at assessing the value of the amenities to make an accurate trade-off to wage?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. One assumption that we have to make when we write this paper is that the workers kind of know what they would choose if they had the options. Even if they don't know, so if they would just click randomly, this couldn't explain our results. So we have some exercise, then if they don't know what they are doing, you would assume that all valuations for these amenities are very similar, but we find a huge variance. So yeah, it seems like they kind of know if they work from home more than other things.
More in terms of them making an actual trade-off on a work decision based on whether
Eccentric.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, we have to assume it in the end. I think one advantage we have is that we have the same paradigm for workers and firms. So it's at least they have the same questions that they see, and it seems like workers and firms seem to have different responses to it. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Or? Perfect. Then thank you. I was very brief, I think. Maybe too brief. So thank you.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Kyle Schirmann. I'm a PhD student at Harvard Business School in the strategy unit. I am on the market, but this is not my job market paper, so that explains the tie. This is joint work with Raj Choudhury, one of the co-organizers, Miguel Espinosa, my advisor Tarun, Khanna, and Christos, Makridis, who's actually in the audience here and presenting 2 days from now. But I'm excited to share with you the results of a field experiment we did in 2020 when COVID, we didn't know what the future was going to look like. And so for a while, things looked a little more optimistic, and we had the opportunity to run this experiment. But the research question I'm going to ask is, how does the intensity of work from home And when I say that, I mean, how many days are you spending as an employee or a manager in the office versus at home or a third place during the work week? How does that affect intra-organizational communication along hierarchical lines? So that would be managers communicating with their teams, or managers communicating with other managers, workers and workers, et cetera. And obviously, I think in every presentation, we have this kind of latent undercurrent of RTO policies becoming really prominent. And that can be motivated by many reasons, but two potential mechanisms that managers might have in mind is that there's a coordination tax, and that if workers and managers don't have that opportunity for face-to-face coordination, it might require them to be more verbose, put more effort into coordinating tasks because they lack that kind of tacit knowledge. There's also this idea of management through monitoring, right? So managers might find that it's more efficient to kind of manage by walking around. And they might feel like they're more confident in assessing employee performance if they're able to actually see them in the office. And so we asked this question about, compared to a situation which would be kind of the status quo for this particular organization of all employees in the office, does email and asynchronous communication serve as a complement or substitute for tasks along the coordination and the monitoring domains? And so to give a little bit of background on this experiment, so we worked with BRAC, one of the world's largest non-governmental organizations headquartered in Dhaka, Bangladesh. They have over 35,000 employees globally and over $1 billion in earned revenue. So it's a modern contemporary organization that has a lot of the same corporate functions you'd see anywhere in the world. But essentially, just thinking back to early 2020, COVID was it was starting to hit the world. And in Bangladesh, it was in March of that year that the government released a mandate saying that basically all of these employees that had been working almost entirely from the office suddenly were working 100% from home or third places, right? And so for a while, we know that in the future, things looked a little different. But summer 2020, things looked a little more optimistic. It looked like this might pass very quickly. And the government allowed this organization to bring back a certain percentage of employees back to the office. So for kind of health and safety reasons, they would want to cap that at around 30 to 40%. It varied each week. But they were allowed to bring back a certain density of people within the office. So that gave us the opportunity to put in this experiment where for a 9-week period, of which about 7 work weeks, 34, 35 days of actual work time was included in this experimental period, we randomized each week on an employee and day level whether an employee would be present in the office or at home. So this wasn't block randomized in any way. Among the 130 employees and managers who took part of this experiment, it was a lottery conducted every day. And so what that looked like at the end of this period is that you had a certain proportion of workers that were randomized into kind of working fewer than 9 work days from the office in that 35-day period. You had workers that were randomized into an intermediate condition, which translates to about 2 to 3 days per week in the office, and workers randomized into this low work from home condition. And crucially, we observed all of the emails between these employees and managers in that sample. So although 130 employees are part of the experiment, only 106 gave us consent to use their emails. And so we observed the message text, we observed all attachments, and we observed subject lines of a very rich set of email communications within this organization. And we did restrict that set before even doing exploratory analysis to emails where both the sender and recipient consented. So this is a closed dyadic set where every employee in the sample consented to having their email data shared with us. So thinking about, to answer our research question about what is the role of monitoring and coordination as a complement or substitute for in-person collaboration, we classified all of these emails into 4 different categories. And so there's also a kind of 5th positive unclassified category, but that's a very small set of our sample. And so importantly for this presentation are kind of the coordination emails. Those would be emails where you're kind of asking somebody to help out on a task, or you're trying to assemble a team to put something together. And monitoring emails. So that would be, for example, in this case, a manager kind of chiding an employee for, why haven't you done this? Kind of get back to me about that. We also had 2 different categories for just personal emails. That would be kind of like greetings, how are you, et cetera. And also sending and receiving help and knowledge. And so I'll present, because it's a brief and brilliant presentation, I hope, I'll present just a few of our results. But I'd like to start first with just a basic understanding of the email volume and length. we found that compared to workers being co-located or not co-located, there's really not that much of an effect on overall message volume between employees, except between when you're looking at workers between different teams, where you see kind of an increase. And so that could be explained. It's consistent with an idea of kind of workers from different teams not having kind of a shared tacit knowledge base. So that might explain why they need kind of more email volume. And that also explains kind of the intensity of that email communication. So when workers are, or when a sender and recipient generally are not co-located, they're either one's in the office, one's at home, or they're both working from home. The emails do tend to be more verbose and longer. And that's particularly the case when managers are emailing workers within their teams. Quite surprisingly, a very significant increase in the number of words per message. And that is present among the types of dyads that we observe that in. It's present regardless of whether it's a mix of one person at home, one in the office, et cetera. So I'll explain some of these coefficients. So like WW team would be a worker emailing another worker within the same team. Versus you look at that, I guess, 6th column, you would see a manager emailing a worker within their same team. And so that effect is it's not driven by a work modality of one or the other. It's kind of consistent, varying levels of intensity, but same direction, same significance in most cases. But the more interesting results that speak to that very first question I was asking are about what does non-co-location mean? And what we see is that when employees and managers or employees are not co-located, like they're in different work modalities, that increases the share of emails that are related to coordination. So that's quite consistent with the idea of, when you're in the office, you can just kind of turn your chair around and do some, just follow up on something or put together some quick collaboration. And that's obviously not possible when you're working from home. So we do observe this consistent effect of kind of an increase in the share of the emails related to coordination. And that's particularly the case for worker-worker dyads in the same team. But surprisingly, and this is actually an intriguing result here because that first effect is seen kind of regardless of whether you're talking about managers, employees, horizontal, vertical hierarchy. But when we look at monitoring emails, manager emails actually decrease the intensity of monitoring when the localities differ. So it's negative but not significant for many of those dyads. But in the same team, workers engage in slightly less monitoring of each other, and workers engage in less cross-team monitoring. But I think what's actually surprising here is that you see, I'll show the coefficients themselves. You see, if you look at that bottom table of monitoring emails, you see that when workers, for example, are at home or they're not matching their actual manager's modality, managers are engaging in less monitoring of those employees. But the employees, maybe because they perceive that their manager isn't able to monitor them appropriately, actually increase the volume of monitoring. So that's why you see between the 4th and 5th columns here on the bottom table, a difference in sign. So that suggests that we see, less monitoring, employees kind of thinking that they need to make the case to their managers, suspecting that managers aren't able to do that, but managers actually feeling like they can monitor without that. So I would love to skip the limitations, but briefly, I'll just say, obviously this is a very quick sample period. We know that there's a negative assorting that goes on if organizations adopt these sorts of policies. Of course, we only observe email communication. We did run a follow-up survey with a similar population of workers, not with these workers, but a similar population, that showed that kind of email communication volumes rose in tandem with other forms of communication following COVID. So we're slightly less concerned about that, but of course it is a concern that we're missing some of those other forms of communication. We also have some limited results that we're working on right now, kind of trying to control for prior communication within a dyad. So not necessarily obviously, but if I've been working with somebody in the office for a long time, I've probably been able to establish a shared tacit knowledge base with them. That might require less coordination if we're in different modalities. And in fact, that is what we see when we start to control for that pre-period exposure. And of course, work from home schedules in our experiment, you get some very clean identification when it's randomized on the day-by-day level, but that is not obviously how organizations tend to implement these policies. So that's something to watch out for. But takeaways, briefly, co-location seems to be a substitute for horizontal coordination-related communication, whether that's between workers in the hierarchy or managers. But it seems to be a complement for vertical monitoring-related communication in terms of the managers monitoring their employees. Workers within the same team are allocating more time to communication or coordinated coordination-related communication in terms of email length, et cetera. And I guess the managerial takeaway here would be face-to-face interaction is important for that monitoring, but it also helps employees build relationships. So this could be kind of one study that an employer or HR manager might take into account when they're designing a deliberate policy, but it's not the final say. And with that, I think there's 4 minutes for questions.
I didn't understand how you got to the conclusion that face-to-face interaction is important for efficient managerial monitoring. Maybe I missed it. How did that follow from the evidence?
So that would follow from, in this table we see, if we look at this coefficient of managers to workers within the team, it's not a significant coefficient, right? Versus workers actually have a different perception within their team of they actually increase their monitoring. I guess from the evidence, this is what would be consistent with an understanding of it, but we're not quite getting at the mechanisms here. So this is, I suppose, like a bullet point that would be consistent with this explanation, but we haven't dug right into that.
Thank you. This is super interesting. I wonder, some companies, they have used like AI tools to monitor their employees. Like say you had to check in every 10 minutes. I wonder whether you control for that kind of effects.
Yeah, so we're not controlling for that. My understanding from doing some interviews with people in this firm is they didn't have those sorts of monitoring technologies in place. They didn't have kind of the Microsoft Office 365 monitoring technologies there. I think one other thing that we didn't really need to consider, but we would have to consider now is, email volumes, email lengths are being driven up by the use of Gen AI. This experiment was done in 2020 where access to those tools was not widespread. So we don't have to kind of consider that.
I was wondering whether you can say anything about the real implications for the firm and also for workers themselves. One idea would be to get the HR data on performance evaluations to see whether certain types of communication basically leads to better performance or promotion and so on.
Yeah, so actually not in this particular paper, but in a previous manuscript we did actually collect some data. Not subjective data in the sense that managers were assessing their employees on a scale, but it's what the manager was assessing. So that is a real impact in organizations. We also went back and collected kind of 3 years after the experiment, any promotion data and any promotion and salary increase data that we had among the employees. Unfortunately, there's high turnover in this particular department. So by the time we got to the 3rd year, there were about 50% of the original employees remaining. So we didn't find significant impacts of kind of this randomization into that, but that could be because of the limited length of the experiment. It could also be, it could also just be driven by the lack of power because of the turnover we saw. So yeah, we didn't observe from the data we have any particular impacts on kind of measured increases in salary, et cetera, but we did see workers in this kind of intermediate condition did have higher managerial ratings, and they tended to report, self-report better satisfaction with their work-life balance versus workers in the other 2 categories. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Eline, and I'm going to present you my paper. So, dear applicant, do you mean working from home or shirking from home? Which I wrote together with my promoters of my PhD, which I defended last month. Especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of applicants want jobs with the possibility to telework. But should applicants be explicit about the switch and the reason for it in the application process? Well, the literature is unclear on its consequences on hiring chances. And therefore, we are gonna investigated whether mentioning a desire for teleworking 1 or 2 days a week in an early phase of the recruitment process, whether it impacts the likelihood of being invited to a job interview. And first, we're gonna look if it's motivated by productivity reasons, and then second, if it's motivated by work-life balance. And we also investigated what mentioning this desire for telework signaled to recruiters, again, first when it's motivated by productivity reasons, and second, when it's motivated by work-life balance. And these are the investigated signals. So we investigated whether there was an impact on anticipated achievement striving, anticipated commitment, anticipated availability, and competence. So how did we investigate this? We set up a factorial survey experiment in which real recruiters evaluated fictitious applicants. They each evaluated 5 fictitious applicants, and these applicants differed on 8 variables, which varied randomly over 2 or 3 categories. And therefore, because of this randomization, a causal interpretation was possible. And we employed 8 different jobs to increase the external validity. So the most important vignette factor was the preference for 1 or 2 days telework. So the last one. It had 3 levels, or no preference was mentioned, or a telework preference was mentioned and it was motivated by productivity, or it was mentioned and it was motivated by work-life balance. So we did this in Flanders, which is the northern Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, and we did it we collected our data in the spring of 2022. And we sent our email with the link to the factorial survey experiment to recruiters, which their email address was on the Belgium's largest website, which is the Public Employment Agency of Flanders. We collected these email addresses from jobs that were similar to the ones that we used in the experiment. 266 real recruiters participated, and they each evaluated 5 fictitious applicants. So in total, we had 1,330 observations. Well, first, before I go to the results, I want to say what we expected to find. Well, for a telework preference that was motivated by work-life balance, we expected like a negative consequence on hiring. Why? Because it's for most recruiters, it deviates from like the ideal worker. The ideal worker is the most desirable worker who is always committed and always available for work. But especially the productivity motivation is interesting because on the one hand, it also deviates from the ideal worker image, but on the other hand, you actively emphasize values related to the ideal worker. So if you actually say that you want to be productive, it is expected to please recruiters, and so it has the potential to counterbalance the negative effects of saying that you would like to work from home. Okay, so the results first for the first research question. Well, we did a multivariate regression analysis with the interview scale as the outcome variable and with the job and recruiter characteristics as controls. And what we did find is that compared to a preference, compared to applicants who did not mention a preference for telework, recruiters are 2.1 percentage points less inclined to invite applicants who say that they want to work from home for a productivity reason. And then recruiters are 5.1 percentage points less inclined to invite applicants who say that they want to work from home because of their work-life balance. We did several robustness analyses, including one robustness analysis in which we only used the recruiters that had real-life experience with the job they recruited for. And we find that they even punish more severely. So that's the first indication that it depends on recruiter characteristics, because in our moderation analysis we also see that other recruiter characteristics play a role. For example, whether the recruiter is a parent or not. But also job characteristics play a role, the level of physical activity required in a job, for example, and also applicant characteristics play a role. For example, the level of relevant working experience. So in sum, asking to work from home motivated by a work-life balance reason is always punished by recruiters. And if you motivated by productivity, well, it really depends on the context. It depends on recruiter characteristics, job characteristics, and applicant characteristics. Okay, then I go to the second research question, the signals. These are the signals more in detail. So for anticipated achievement striving, we have items like applicants with such a profile are usually eager to advance. For anticipated commitment, we have statements like willing to make sacrifices for the job or make work a top priority. For availability, we have items like he or she will be usually able to work a substantial amount. And then for the competence factor, we have 3 specific competencies. Social skills is the first one. And then we have self-reliance and productive use of time, as they are linked to work ethic. That's why we took these 2 signals. And what did we find? Well, that expressing telework preference motivated by work-life balance has clear negative effects on anticipated achievement striving, on commitment and availability, but not on competence. And when it's motivated by productivity, we do not see these clear negative effects on the signals, on the investigated signals. So then I come to the conclusion already. So a telework preference motivated by work-life balance is clearly punished. A telework preference motivated by productivity depends on the context. The punishment for work-life balance is bigger than the punishment for productivity reasons. And telework preference for work-life balance has a clear negative effect on anticipated achievement striving, commitment, and availability. So what would we advise? To applicants, we advise to carefully consider whether they want to express this wish for teleworking in the recruitment process. For them, there's a trade-off between being honest to see whether there's a good fit with the organization and to potentially reducing their chances on an interview. And for companies, we advise that they clearly indicate in advance whether they are open to telework, and if they are open to telework, why? Because this will increase the likelihood of attracting good fitted candidates. And also, if they proactively communicate this, then the applicant isn't faced with this dilemma that I explained. Okay, so thank you. A little bit too fast. Yes.
Super interesting. It ties up a lot. I'm sure Simon is thinking that, yeah, it ties up very much with your paper. Because in Equilibrium, I'm a manager. No one ever says that they want to work from home. And I just think that they don't, and I believe what they tell me. Of course, they're not saying it because they know they're not going to get the job. So completely consistent. And it's actually hard for firms. They learn by actions, but they don't learn by listening.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Okay. Chiara.
So do you know, have you had a chance to ask these recruiters how often they were actually seeing in their experience this being a request? Like, do applicants indeed ask for working from home, or is this something that maybe strategically they do not?
You mean in real life whether this occurs? Yeah. Well, no, we don't really know, but we do see that teleworking becomes more and more important for, especially maybe for younger employees. And then from real life context, we know that a lot of people, for example, accept jobs that are located far away only if on the condition that they can telework. So it's not implausible that they already pronounce it in the first stages of a recruitment process. And we also framed it to the recruiters like you are and you have to help in the second round of the review process. A colleague has had a former conversation by phone, and so they do not know whether the applicant themselves brought it up or the colleague asked questions about it or so. Someone else?
Can I make another? I also think the other thing, if you think that recruiters' interpretation reflects like their valuation on someone that likes work from home. It's very consistent with the Em and Natalia paper, because there's another like treatment and select, because I often wonder why firms don't offer it enough. And one story would be allowing a given person to work from home, say, may increase their productivity, but the types of people that like it are low productivity types, which is like your paper, that the selection effect is bad. And so that would be also very consistent with this one, equilibrium. Even because, you know, when I've done RCTs, that's a treatment effect, and the treatment effect could still be positive if the selection effect is negative. And I think in you guys, one of the versions at least you found, they offset each other. And so it's also, as, you know, it's another kind of thing why it would explain why there's not enough in equilibrium, is it generates this negative selection effect.
One of the findings I found very interesting was that you don't seem to have any impact at all in expressing a preference for temporal flexibility.
Yeah, that's true. So that looks like it's more common or more accepted. Like, yeah, indeed, that's an interesting finding.
Is that more common in Flanders?
Yeah, it is more common. Yeah, indeed. But we would have expected some negative consequences, but it doesn't seem to have an effect at all. So that's really like common. Yeah, like, I don't know the words for it. Like accepted, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. 2 questions. I think one of the regressions, my understanding was you're explaining the 10-point survey response with an all-S regression. And if so, have you thought about using techniques that take into account the ordinality of the outcome variable? And second, so the whole survey is obviously non-incentivized, and one concern might be that, you know, there could be some sort of social desirability bias among the hiring people, because they know, oh, the public is on our asses for being more lenient on work from home and allowing that. So of course you see that they punish if someone expresses wanting to work from home, but I wonder if you have thoughts about, could the actual effect be even worse than that, because they have sort of pretended to be a bit nicer in this experiment, whereas if this was an actual applicant, they would be even harsher.
Yeah. Well, the first question I can be rather short. Well, because it's a scale from 0 to 10, till 10, we saw it as an continuous variable, which is, we didn't do an ordinal regression, which I can still, which is a good idea. And then for the second point, well, we did include a social desirability scale, and we saw that the recruiters that are sensitive to answering in a socially desirable way, when we how was it again? So they punish more severely. So is that correct what I'm saying? So if we take them out and we only look at the people who are not sensitive to social desirable answering, then we see that the results are more severe. Yeah.
Thank you, super interesting. I wonder whether you found any interaction effects by gender. As we know, the literature for like parenthood penalty, right? There's a motherhood penalty, but there's a wage increase for fatherhood. I wonder.
Yeah. So we expected maybe like a flexibility stigma for people that are parents, for applicants that are parents, but it was the other way around. Actually, it were recruiters that are parents that were more negatively, especially for the productivity reason, because maybe they found it less credible. If someone says, I want to work from home because I'm more productive, and if as a recruiter I am a parent, then I don't believe you that much. So that was the thing we saw.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Sano. I'm a second-year PhD student at Waseda University, and today I'm going to be talking about this paper, Wage Penalties for Workplace Amenity, Evidence from Remote Work in the United States. The research question here is very straightforward. It's just how much income do workers sacrifice for the ability to work from home? And we'll also look at whether this amount differs across groups. So I'm not going to go too much into the background literature here, but there are two main contributions to this paper. The first is an empirical estimation of the wage penalty for work from home with a sample that's generalizable to workers in the United States. Studies in this area so far have mostly either used self-reporting evaluations, so essentially asking people directly in a survey how much they would be willing to pay for the amenity, or experiments that usually use theoretical job offers to back out that evaluation. Examples of this include Barrera et al. In 2021, Mass and Play in 2017, Nagler et al. In 2024, and also the paper Simon just presented 3 presentations ago. So thank you for that. But what we're going to do here is have an empirical estimation that allows us to see what happens when these theoretical evaluations meet actual market forces to create a wage penalty. And then the next contribution is that for this kind of estimation, the estimation of a wage penalty for work from home, panel data is usually required. But in this case, we're going to overcome that with the available cross-sectional data. The reason that panel data is usually required here is that in almost all cases, the people who are making the most money are also the people who have the highest levels of workplace amenity. So when you do the cross-sectional analysis on that, it actually looks like there's a wage premium for these amenities, which doesn't really make sense in theory. And this is something that was touched on in Massis et al. In their paper in 2023. The closest existing work to this paper is Defraha et al. In 2022. They also do an empirical analysis on this topic, but they look at the UK instead of the United States, and they also take a very different approach to the estimation. So for data, I don't think I have to explain this too much. I'm using the Survey of Working Arrangements and Attitudes, SWAA. So thank you to everyone who's worked hard to collect that data and also make it available for public use. Just one quick note on the data here is that the SWAA does have data available from early 2020, but for this paper, we're only going to be using data from January 2022 onwards, which is the point at which the employment rate in the United States went back to its pre-pandemic level. And this is to, as much as possible, get rid of the confounding effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the data period for this paper is going to be January 2022 to December 2024 here. So to get to the actual estimation, the equation that we're going to estimate is as straightforward as possible. So on the left-hand side, we have log income. And on the right-hand side, we have our vector of controls, which includes pretty much what you'd expect. And then importantly, we also have a measure of worker efficiency on our work from home. And including this is going to make sure that what we're estimating is not just whether people get more or less productive under work from home. And then our variable of interest is going to be this work from home level variable here. And we're actually going to define this as a categorical variable. So if someone is working 0% of their days on a work from home, they're going to be the none category. 0 to 50% of work days done on a work from home is low. 50 to 97% is high, and then 97 to 100% is full. Using this as a categorical variable, I think, helps to make the results a little bit more interpretable. And it also helps to deal with any potential nonlinearities in the effects as well. But so if we were to just estimate this equation as is, we still have the problem that we saw earlier, where people who are working from home the most are also the people who tend to be making the most money. So here we have a chart that was created, again, directly out of the SWAA data. But on the horizontal axis here, we have work from home frequency. And then on the vertical axis, we have income. And we can see a very clear positive correlation between these two. So if we were to estimate this equation, our estimates for beta would be biased upwards. So we need to take care of that. And to do so, we're going to add in this income 2019 variable. And I believe this was probably available from the screening questions from the SWAA. But this is going to allow us to control for the worker's ability to garner a high wage. And critically, since 2019 was before the mainstream legitimization of work from home as an amenity, it's going to allow us to do that for most people as a fixed value before they had any sort of decision on how long they were going to work from home. So this is going to give us a very clean way to sort of pin down their ability prior to work from home setting in. So then we'll go ahead and estimate both equations. On the left column here, we have the equation without the control for income 2019. And we can see here very clearly, or I guess we can see here looking at the full and high categories. Here for work from home on the left-hand side, there's not really anything going on. But when we add in on the right column the control for income 2019, the coefficients for the full and high levels of work from home become significantly negative. And the base level here is going to be the low level of work from home. So what this is telling us is that for a worker to go from the low level of work from home to the high level of work from home is associated with approximately a 1.8% reduction in income. And then going from the low category to the full level of work from home is associated with approximately a 2.3% decrease in income. And these are relatively modest decreases, and they're certainly less than what previous studies have estimated for the sort of the theoretical valuation of work from home. So this is potentially telling us that people are currently not paying their full valuation for the amenity. We can also look at the bottom here, the none category, and we see that we have this very counterintuitive negative coefficient for the none category here. What's actually going on is that in this none group, there are people who could potentially work from home, but for some reason or the other, they're not working from home. And there's also people that, just because of their job description, could not possibly work from home. And people in this later group generally have very low relative wage levels. So that's why we're seeing the negative coefficient there. Unfortunately, in the data, it's very difficult to separate out these two groups. So for our purposes, we're only going to be comparing the low level with the high and full levels here. So we can also do some heterogeneity analysis here. One possible dimension of interest can be industry. So in different industries, there's very different cultures, likely very different ways of looking at work from home. So it's possible that the wage difference or the wage penalty is going to be different across industries. So to check this, we can run the analysis for each industry separately, and then we can order the industries by share of jobs in each industry that can be done remotely. And for this, we're going to use the index from Dingle and Niemann in 2020. So we do that estimation, and we get the following results. So on the vertical here, we have the industries ordered ascending by the percentage of jobs that can be done remotely. And then on the horizontal, you have the estimated wage penalty. So the further left you get, the steeper that wage penalty is going to be. And then as you move toward that zero line there, the penalty starts to disappear. And what we can see is that when we're at the top and we're in industries where there aren't a lot of jobs that can be done remotely, the wage penalty is very severe. But once you get to the bottom, in industries such as information, finance and insurance, and education, where there are a lot of positions that can be done remotely, that wage penalty is essentially non-existent. All right. Also, one of the really attractive things about work from home is that it can help groups of people who historically have been, for whom it's been very historically hard to get into the office itself, to increase their labor supply and also to become more integrated into a workplace. One of these groups is working mothers. So we check the wage penalty for them in this interaction here. So we add an interaction for being female and having children. And what we see particularly in this high category here is that when we add in the female and has children interaction there, we get a significantly negative coefficient. And this is telling us that working mothers are currently facing a steeper penalty for the amenity to work from home than our other groups, which is an unfortunate result. All right, and then to recap, we find that workers are paying a significant but moderate penalty for the amenity to work from home, and that the penalty is heterogeneous across groups, and that it's smaller in industries where more jobs can be done in work from home, and larger for women who are raising children. One point at the bottom here that I wasn't able to get to in this presentation is that there is a slight issue with the measurement timing of some of the key variables here, and that they're measured in slightly different periods. So we make sure that our estimates are numerically valid by pulling in data from the survey of income and program participation to impute some of these key values. Imputing those values and then running the analysis again, we find that the estimates are, in fact, robust to using imputed values for the key variables. So if anyone's interested in the details on that or how we do the imputation, please feel free to ask at any point. And I will wrap up there. Thank you for your time. Yes.
Interesting paper. I would encourage you to approach the data with a slightly broader conceptual framework.
Okay.
Because, basic theory says if there's an amenity value to work from home, workers will get some of it. But it also increases the geographic extent of the labor market for those workers who can work from home some or all of the time, which would lead you to expect that they'll be able to get better matching efficiency.
Sure.
There's a productivity effect that comes from that won't be, as I understand it, captured by your income 2019 variable.
That's correct, yeah.
And also work from home affects the extent and nature of labor market competition, which could alter how match surplus gets shared between worker and firm. That could go in either direction. So it's useful to get these net effects that you have here, but I don't think you can immediately jump from your net result numbers and conclude that's the consequence of how the amenity value of work from home works out in equilibrium, because there are these other forces also changing from the pre-pandemic to the post-pandemic situation.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, very interesting. So you mentioned the Maestas et al. Paper, finding the positive relationship between wages and amenities. Did they also try controlling for income, or is the key innovation here being able to control for a lag of income or a lag of income prior to the proliferation of remote work with COVID?
That's a good question. I think, the Maestas et al. Strategy, I think, was, have to kind of go back and look at the details on that, but their strategy, I think, was quite different from what we're doing here. The Income 2019 is doing is it's kind of one piece of longitudinal information within a repeated cross-section data set. So it's pinning down essentially, where someone was at right before the explosion of work from home. So the idea here is that we do have this sort of like one pinpoint piece of information that's going to allow us to do this estimation within an otherwise entirely cross-sectional.
Really quick, but just on your last slide, did I see right that you do show, as was mentioned earlier, like a fatherhood premium? Because you have full with has children being positive and high and has children being positive. So is that pointing to the fatherhood premium from work from home compared to mothers?
Really good question. That certainly could be it. But this especially on the full level here, when you have that positive coefficient coming out, this is very strange. I don't think there's really a reason we should see that has children being positive. Without a lot more detailed analysis, I can't really say anything firm on it, but it's possible that there's a little bit of like reverse causality going on here as well. So potentially people who know that they can work from home fully without facing too much of a penalty in their job, it could be easier for them to actually have children. Without more in-depth analysis, I can't really say anything firm about that, but that could be something that's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, the study of compensated differentials is such an interesting one. There's a, I'm trying to think about how to say this in 10 seconds. So there's all these workplace amenities. I guess the main thing is just that controlling for last year's income is just, it's sort of a crude proxy. And so thinking about what other things you maybe have in the SWAA that you can maybe saturate the model a little bit more.
Sure.
We found, I have a paper coming out of management science where we measure workplace practices in a very multi-dimensional way. We show that controlling for these workplace practices sort of functions like that sort of unobserved heterogeneity. But anyways, I think I'm past the 1 minute, so we'll chat more when it's down.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.